In today's video, we have the latest trade talk from around the NHL. We're again taking a look at the Montreal Canadiens, as well as the Philadelphia Flyers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Plus, the Los Angeles Kings are spiraling out of control. Could they move one of their top stars, at least based on contract, who was a big acquisition last season? Plus, we have another suspension. Rangers captain Jacob Trouba will be sitting for a couple games. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots of NHL trade talk, as well as some more NHL roster moves and a suspension to talk about tonight. Before we do that, though, I do want to acknowledge a pretty important special milestone. Pittsburgh Penguins forward Lars Eller playing a game number 1,000 today for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Lars Eller is the first Danish-born player to hit that milestone, which is a big accomplishment. Certainly, we don't have a lot of NHL players from that country, but there are some really good ones, mind you. Eller, of course, was a longtime Montreal Canadian, went to the Washington Capitals, and then eventually made his way to Pittsburgh. Eller, for a large part of his career, was probably mostly a third-line player as well. So for somebody who never really had, a big scoring role, certainly, a little bit less likely to hit a milestone like this. So certainly good on him for sticking with it and certainly providing value to these NHL clubs over the years and being usually known as a responsible two-way player and somebody who's carved a pretty nice career, even though they're not a huge point producer. So Lars Eller, 1,000 games today, so a well-deserved accolade for him. As I mentioned as well, Rangers captain Jacob Trouba has been suspended by the Department of NHL Player Safety for 2 games for an elbow. It happened last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. He came up behind the Vegas player, had his elbow up and kind of smashed into him. Certainly not quite to the level of Brendan Gallagher and when he came across the ice with his elbow up like a chicken wing, but Trouba has known for his big hits, and he's certainly had a lot of big hits that have been causing a lot of NHL debates on clean or not. Certainly some people like to think his hits are dirty. For the most part, his hits have been clean in my opinion, but when you're laying big thunderous hits, They do tend to get a variety of opinions out there, and I suspect that at some point he may end up getting suspended for one, but it's not what happened. It's actually an elbow. So, certainly justifiable here by player safety, I think, to hand out a suspension. The Vegas player appeared to be injured on the play as well. So Trouba's missing tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators. The Rangers also lost another top 4 defenseman in Ryan Lindgren to an injury last night. So they're playing tonight without 2 of their top 4 D. So that's certainly not a good good way to win games, and they're already been on a bit of a struggle here as of late, so that's not going to help any matters anymore. The Edmonton Oilers continue their winning ways today, winning their 16th consecutive game today. What a crazy streak they're on. It's actually tied for second longest winning streak in NHL history. They win their next one and it'll tie the record. I know in the beginning of the year when I made my predictions and picked the Oilers to win the Cup, based on the first month or so of the season, I was thinking I was going to look pretty foolish for that selection. Obviously a really bad start, a fired coach, and things were not looking good in Edmonton at all. After a coaching change, some tweaks to how they do things, and now look at them. Stuart Skinner's have been a big part of that run that they're on as well. Pickard's come up from the minors and played pretty good when called upon as well. Draisaitl and McDavid racking up the points, but not to the level that they normally do. I mean, they will still very much be in the race down the stretch for the scoring title, but that appears to be more of a race between Nathan MacKinnon and Nikita Kucherov this year. But I still think McDavid in the second half will have a big enough push that he'll be getting close and keeping them on their heels there right to the end. But at the end of the day, the Oilers are playing better team hockey. They're winning more hockey games, and I'm sure that's what's more important right now at this stage of their career in trying to get things done. So I know a lot of us picked the Oilers to be a contender and a Cup favorite this year, and they're starting to look like that a lot here over the last 16 games. So curious to see how long this winning streak will continue for them. Of course, Corey Perry made his debut for the Oilers today. Didn't look too bad. First hockey game in a little while. I know I was kind of worried for the Oilers. I didn't want the Oilers streak to lose after he came into lineup. I think he cursed them or something, but that certainly doesn't appeared to be the case. The Maple Leafs got some bad news today. In practice, Calle Jarnkrok took a puck to the hand and ended up with a broken knuckle. We did talk about the fact that he was injured in practice before, but we didn't know the extent of it. And now we know. Of course, they're doing battle for the second time in a week tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. Another tough game, tough team. Hellebuck in between the pipes this evening. And Jarnkrok's absence will certainly be felt in that lineup. They get Tyler Bertuzzi back tonight. He missed the last game because him and his wife were expecting a newborn baby. Ryan Reeves gets back in the lineup tonight as well, and he actually scored a goal in the first period of the Leafs and Jets game in his hometown too. So certainly a better game for him so far. I've only seen bits and pieces of that game. Obviously, I was watching some other games in the early start times as well. But Jarnkrok going to be out for at least, they're calling it week to week. It's probably going to be at least 2 to 3 weeks. So the fact that we have an all-star break coming up will kind of minimize to some degree the number of games, but that's gonna hurt the Leafs. He's been an important piece for them. In Calgary, we talked yesterday about the fact that A.J. Greer looked to have a pretty gruesome ankle injury. Now we know the full extent. Is looking at about an 8-week recovery. They're actually calling it a fractured foot. So he's going to be out for quite some time. He'll probably be mid to late March before he's really able to make a return. Boston today recalled Patrick Brown. Vegas activated Michael Amadio off injured reserve. And the Oilers, after their game today, where they picked up another 16th victory, they sent Dylan Holloway down to the American Hockey League. So I suspect Holloway will be back after the All-Star break, but that'll keep him playing here, especially where he missed a decent amount of time. That's really not a punishment of any kind. That's just for his development. He doesn't need the break like some of them will here coming up for the All-Star game. Around the league in the rumor mill, a lot of things being talked about. What about the Los Angeles Kings? What is going on in LA? They continue to spiral out of control. We've seen veteran defenseman and alternate captain Drew Doughty speak his mind publicly after one of their recent losses, saying how some guys individually are basically not putting in the effort, thinking that they're going to have a big night point-wise, and they're more concerned with their individual stats than the team winning. A lot of people are trying to figure out exactly who he's pinpointing there, but a lot of this year's criticism, fairly or unfairly, has been pointed towards Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois has been an absolute I don't know what you want to call it. Disappointment is probably the best way to say it. Essentially, they bring him in from Winnipeg, sign him to an 8-year deal at $8.5 million per season, and his effort level hasn't been great. We've seen games that looked like before when he was in Columbus and when he wasn't really, you could tell he didn't want to be there, and I don't think that's the case. I mean, he wanted to go to LA. He wanted to sign there. So this is not like this is a case of him wanting out again. I mean, we've seen him go from Columbus, to Winnipeg and to LA. I don't think we're anywhere near that. Like, that's not really what the case is here. But at the same time, the team is struggling. And this team had a phenomenal start. First 15, 20 games of the season, a lot of us were like, I know myself, I was like, I expected LA to be good, but they were even better than I expected. And they went from being a playoff contender to maybe they could be a cup contender. So it's kind of brought some people to wonder if the LA Kings are kind of having buyer's remorse here when it comes to Dubois and the fact that it has not worked out here so far. I mean, obviously he's got a long-term contract and we're really talking about a small sample size in the grand scheme of things, but you would think after 40 games, he'd have a chance to gel with his teammates, find more ways to contribute. And really, like I said, there's also been times when it's not just a case of execution. Like, there's been times when you really have to question the effort. And when that is a problem, that's something that's really difficult for the coaching staff to overcome. So there's some wondering out there, are they going to look to try to move him? I mean, at this point, Dubois is a case of, I don't know. I mean, he's got a lot of term and a lot of money on that contract. He's only in the first year. Would teams be wanting to take a chance on him if they decide they want to cut bait? I mean, I don't think that's something we're going to see before the deadline. If they even wanted to go down that road, I think it would have to be in the summer. But I mean, who's going to take him, right? That's the problem. I mean, they are supposed to get back Victor Arvidsson next month. There's belief that the Kings are looking to maybe add some goaltending help because goaltending hasn't been as good as it was the first 20 games of the year as well. If you take the first half of the year and break it into 2 halves themselves, the last batch of games here, not nearly as good as the first half. Goaltending's a part of that, but not all of that. So it's hard to say what the LA Kings do. Some wonder what the future of Todd McClellan behind the bench. GM Rob Blake's kind of made it sound like that they really don't want to go there, and I don't blame them. I'm not sure it's really a coaching issue per se, but something has to give. But the future of Dubois is already coming up, and the fact we're only half a season in really goes to question this guy's character and work ethic. So you have to wonder how that long-term future is going to work out. As far as the other moves we could see within the Kings, though, I think besides adding goaltending, guys like Kaliev could be available. They called up Alex Turcotte today as well, so I do wonder if he's going to be showcased for a potential trade. I mean, was a really high draft pick that has not yet worked out. Even a guy like Anderson Dolan's been in and out. They have some young players there that believe they can play and need to be getting in the right situation, the right opportunity. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to correct this with some trades. But as far as Dubois goes, I don't see that happening as much as they probably right now, like I said, are having buyer's remorse. Some other moves around the league in Philly. There's still a lot of belief that Sean Walker is going to be dealt right-hand shot defenseman, having a real solid year for the Flyers. I know we've seen the Flyers re-sign some current people here as of late with Tippett and Paling getting extensions. I don't think Walker's going to be one of those guys. After they made the Cutter Gauthier trade and picked up Jamie Drysdale, it's believed that essentially that kind of pushes Walker out of the top four on a long-term basis. So it probably makes more sense to move him considering what the market's likely going to bring back in return. I was expecting a pretty solid return for a guy like Walker. I know Jeff Merrick had linked him to the Edmonton Oilers. We know the Oilers right now are probably pretty good at forward after getting Holloway back recently, signing Perry. They could add another forward, but I think if anything, they're going to probably add on the blue line, and maybe I do wonder about goaltending. I'm not really sure how they're going to handle the situation right now. The way Skinner's been playing lately, confidence is high. You get Campbell in the minors, Pickard, and been around the block, but doesn't have any really playoff experience in that regard. So hard to say what they do. But if anything, I would suspect the Oilers are most likely to add on the blue line. Walker would make a ton of sense for them for sure, but we'll see. Either way, it is expected that the Flyers move him before the deadline. And in Toronto, of course, they're still linked to a few guys as well. According to Dave Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com, he still says they're linked to some defensemen like Chris Tanev in Calgary, Matt Dumba in Arizona. But the belief is at this point that the Leafs are not willing to pay the big prices to make the acquisitions. They've done this a lot in the past, the last few years. The cupboards for their assets when it comes to prospects and draft capital is low, and it's believed that the belief isn't high enough in this group this year to really be in an all-in kind of effort to really make a run for it and go for it and spend all these assets they really can't afford to lose. I mean, they don't really appear to be interested in moving prospects like Fraser Minton or Easton Cowan, and that's who teams are going to be asking for, as well as any current or future first-round picks that they haven't already moved. And that, unless they win a Stanley Cup, would be very hurtful to the future of this franchise. They're going to have to work in guys and rookies in the next few years to offset these mammoth contracts that their top forwards are making. And, they just can't afford to lose these guys, right? So clearly, and at the other time too, you also have to think about the fact that, their top forwards have been around a while. They're at a mature age. They're mostly signed. At some point, you need guys to kind of be the next wave. And, if they start moving all these guys that look promising, they're not going to have that wave. You could go from being a really good competitive team to a bad team in a short stretch of time. They're not there yet. Of course, we're looking at quite a ways down the road, but still, you don't want to give up your future too much. So as much as the Leafs are most likely to try to add on defense, those are your guys they're targeting. Unless the prices come down drastically, don't expect them to do much. It would be the consensus right now. And the other big thing I want to talk about is Montreal. We've talked about Xhekaj maybe being available, but not really so much, an asset the Habs are wanting to move, but they're having some conversations because teams are inquiring. Of course, where he went down to the minors for like a month or so. and teams are starting to wonder what the future holds after spending more time in the NHL last year. Kind of looked upon as taking a step back. I would say I've seen him play a couple of games on this call-up. He's out tonight, but the couple of games leading into it, to me, looked a little shaky. So I don't think that confidence is quite there. So I'm not sure that he's going to be a mainstay this time around either. Wouldn't be surprised if he does end up going back to the minors. But with all the teams that have been inquiring, we've heard a lot about, I know Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick both mentioned on the podcast that they said that if he does end up going anywhere, they could really see him fitting in well with the Flyers. And it's believed that the Canadiens have received legit trade offers, and Pagnota reports that a former first-round pick who was a forward was on the table in a deal presented to the Habs for Xhekaj, and they rejected that deal. I do wonder if that was Danny Briere and the Flyers trying to pick up Xhekaj, maybe for a guy like Morgan Frost. Frost kind of fits the description of what is believed to be being offered, a younger, former first-round pick forward. There's, if you look around the league and kind of do some investigative journalism there, you might be able to narrow down somebody else that fits the bill too. But we know that Briere has been involved in a lot of conversations, and we know that they appeared to have shown interest in this player before. So it wouldn't be surprising if we found out that it was indeed them, and a guy like Frost might be what was offered. But apparently Ken Hughes likes Xhekaj enough that he's not willing to trade him for a guy like Morgan Frost. So we'll see. Obviously, the deal, it could happen, but it's not a given. It really boils down to what comes across the table. But again, the Habs are not actively shopping this player. It's just somebody who's generated some interest. And when you have a good young player that's interesting and not playing all the time, teams are going to check in and inquire because they wonder, what the plan and future holds for that player within that said organization. So we'll see where things go. Let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.